Elizabeth Clare Prophet, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom. Listen now as Elizabeth Clare Prophet and her guest discuss critical issues of the day. This week, Mrs. Prophet talks with Doctors Bill and Gladys McGary, foremost medical experts on the Edgar Cayce cures, author of the Edgar Cayce Remedies and Born to Live, and Jess Stearn, author of Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet.
Welcome to Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Today our guests, Jess Stearn and Dr. and Mrs. Bill McGary, are speaking for Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet, the famous clairvoyant whose medical readings from trance state astounded scientific experts and continues to challenge those who know him the world round. He was from an old conservative Kentucky family of Christian origins and upbringing, born March 18th, 1877, in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Edgar Cayce completed the 7th grade, but he went on to provide the most profound teaching advice in his life readings. In 43 years of his research and service to people near and far, he actually completed 14,000 readings. 64% of these were on medical considerations, cures for the sick, readings of past lives showing the origins of present problems. 9,000 of these describe physical disabilities and suggested treatments. These are on file at the Association for Research and Enlightenment at Virginia Beach, Virginia. Today, then, we have with us Jess Stearn, prize-winning feature writer for the New York Daily News, associate editor of Newsweek, and researcher and popular author of Edgar Cayce, The Sleeping Prophet. Jess Stearn has also written The Door to the Future, The Sixth Man, Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation, Search for a Soul, and The Search for Taylor Caldwell. Interestingly, Edgar Cayce predicted Jess Stearn's involvement in the ARE in 3 different readings, and the first he made while Jess Stearn was yet a child. Cayce said that Stearn would come down from New York and make ARE prosperous. Fittingly, when Stearn arrived at Virginia Beach, he was given the key to the Cayce Library. At that time, Jess Stearn did not even accept reincarnation. And so the sign on Hugh Lynn Cayce's office read, "Please do not try to convert Jess Stearn to reincarnation." Dr. Bill McGary is the Director of Medical Research Division of the Edgar Cayce Foundation, where he has been since 1965. He is the founder and director of the ARE Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona. His books include Edgar Cayce on Healing, Edgar Cayce and the Palma Christi, Acupuncture and Body Energies, and the Edgar Cayce Remedies. Dr. McGary took interest in the Cayce readings 10 years after Cayce's death and is the foremost and leading medical expert on those readings and their treatment today. Dr. Gladys McGary was born in India, the daughter of medical missionaries. Her primary language was Hindustani, and at that time, she feels that she contacted reincarnation. She came to the United States at the age of 16 to study medicine. She is today a lecturer and pioneer in the field of holistic medicine, a leading authority of New Age birthing movement, and author of Born to Live. The McGarys are co-authors together of There Will Your Heart Be Also, and they have been practicing medicine together since 1943. They have 6 children, all of whom are in the medical field. Both are considered experts on Edgar Cayce's remedies and cures. At their clinic, the healing process includes special diets and herbs, castor oil packs, healing massage, exercise program, colon therapy, daily meditation and prayer, and dreams in health and healing analysis. Jess Stearn, Gladys McGary, Bill McGary, welcome to Summit University Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are very grateful that you were able to come and very interested to learn about Edgar Cayce's healings and his cures and how you're applying them and the ones that you feel are most effective. This is your latest book, The Edgar Cayce Remedies. Would you like to tell us about that, Bill?
Well, the Edgar Cayce Remedies came out of our study of the Edgar Cayce material over a number of years, and as practicing physicians, we came in contact with this material back in 1955. That's been almost 30 years now, so we've had close association with it. And we found that at first we got into the Cayce material through our spiritual direction. We became interested because of reincarnation. My wife was not quite as rapid to take it on as I was, but we found it to be very logical after a while. And so we studied the spiritual nature of these readings, and then we got into the physical application of them gradually. And we found that, well, it was like Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and these other things will be added unto you. And so we tried to orient our patients toward understanding their spiritual nature and see how that reflects onto the physical manifestation of what the spirit is through the direction of the mind. And that's the way I oriented the book, to understand first the nature of the human body and then start to talk about some of the ways that we approach the healing of the body, and understanding the healing as a sort of a process in human consciousness. And we call it, what we call it now, because of the things we've worked with over the years, is that healing is an adventure in consciousness. And that's what we've been embarked on.
In your book that you co-authored with Mary Ellen Carter, Edgar Cayce, on healing, she brings up and interviews people who have had miraculous cures, whose lives were saved, and you analyze specifically the medical ramifications of the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
These stories are so exciting. I was wondering if you and Mrs. McGary might speak to us about some of your most outstanding experiences in healing.
Well, let me start it off.
Okay.
I'll tell you about a recent one, because it's, you know, sometimes healing is a very simple thing, and people need to experience the healing at the physical level without referring back to maybe what may be the spiritual cause. But this was an individual who is a laboratory technician, and it was just about 4 weeks ago that he came into the office. He had laboratory tests with him. He was an old patient of mine, but he also had yellow in his whites of his eyes. He had hepatitis, and it had already advanced so that his readings were very, very high in the laboratory tests, the SGOT and SGPT. And so we got started, and basically we found that for hepatitis, the kind that he had, which was not really identified until he was over with it, but the therapy was simply application of a castor oil pack over his abdomen so that it covers the liver, and a diet that is very simple, and rest and lots of water, and we also gave him vitamin C in large doses. And he's back to work now as of day before yesterday, I think, and within 3 weeks. Why, his hepatitis had ascended like that, and then as soon as we started castor oil packs, it came on down. The way I figure this and the way we've understood it, and that's the way I tried to explain it in that book with Mary Ellen Carter, that there is a reason medically behind why these things work. It has to be understood sometimes in the form of energy, because every substance has energy because it's made up of atoms. And so the energy of the castor oil penetrating through the body has a cleansing effect on the cells of the body and cells of the liver, and then they can function more normally. That's basically how it seems to work.
When you analyze castor oil, is there any clue as to what gives it its miraculous powers?
Well, I think really it's because God has a sense of humor. You see, if you were to take, for instance, an ounce of castor oil one day, and then the next week take an ounce of peanut oil, you would notice a marked difference. And when I introduced this whole business of using the castor oil packs, Hugh Lynn Casey introduced me back at Unity Village. It was the first time I talked about the use of castor oil, and he said, "This, my friends, will be a moving experience."
Castor oil comes from a plant, does it not?
Yes, it comes from the Ricinus communis plant, and the main constituent is Ricinus ricinoleic oil. So it has no secret within it. It's just the plant itself. It has a leaf that is like a palm, and it's interesting that back in the Middle Ages they called the plant the Palma Christi, which meant the palm of Christ. And why they did it we didn't know, but maybe Gladys, you can tell the story about that.
Thank you. I wanted to say before that when we got interested in the Casey material, it was very, as physicians, it was difficult for us to get into the medical aspect of it. Hugh Lynn Casey would come around and he'd say to us, "Why don't you two get into the physical readings that Casey gave?" And we'd say, "Look, Hugh Lynn, your father was psychic. He knew how to deal with these things. If a patient needed something changed, he knew how to change it. We're physicians. We don't know how to do that." And he'd go away. The next year he'd come around and he'd say, "Why don't you guys get into the physical readings?" And we'd say, "Hugh Lynn, your father was psychic. He knew how to do these things. We don't know how to do that. We're physicians. We can't do that." So he kept at us until finally we began using castor oil. And lo and behold, the stuff worked. And it worked in ways that were really surprising to us and continually surprise us. The story that Bill wants me to tell is the story about our youngest son. He was about 8 years old, and we'd been up at Asilomar, and we stopped at a friend's home after that, and David and their younger son were playing, and they had a split-level house, so they would jump down, you know, they'd grab hold of the bottom level and jump down over the stairs and go on. They were running through the house like this. And got to be about 10 o'clock, and Bill said, "David, time to go to bed." He said, "One more time," and that's always when it happens, you know. So this time when he jumped and caught hold, his hand slipped, and he landed like this, right across the stairs down below, and let out a scream. He's a chunky kid anyway. And we went over, and Bill picked him up and brought him over and laid him down, and we checked his back, and he had acute point tenderness that we were really concerned that he had a fracture of the vertebra. So we laid him down beside our bed on a castor oil pack, and he was lying there very restless for most of the night, and about 3 o'clock in the morning he settled down and slept the rest of the night very peacefully. We wakened him about 8 o'clock in the morning because we had to go on, and we checked him very carefully, making sure that what was going on. We couldn't find any point tenderness at all. We had him get up, move, turn, roll, and he had no tenderness at all. And when we stood him up, we couldn't find any tenderness either. So we said to him, "David, what happened during the night?" And he said, "Well, my back hurt real bad until the middle of the night when Jesus came and put his hand on my back and it stopped hurting."
Oh my goodness.
So we've wondered since then if the name, the Palma Christi, didn't come from people having experiences of that type with the castor oil plant, with the castor oil pack itself. I mean, an 8-year-old kid isn't about to listen to what his parents are saying, you know, so he didn't know we'd been calling it that. And yet, in his dream state, he had this experience. And we've had continual, ongoing experiences with that in the in-between times.
Well, you know, Paracelsus had a theory of signatures, that in every plant and herb there would be a sign of the shape of the organ that it would heal or treat. And the name probably came because through the hand, the symbol of the healing of the whole man, not just a part of it.
Yeah.
Jess, please tell us what you think is the great part of Casey's healing.
Well, when I was researching The Sleeping Prophet, I asked Bill McGary how he thought it all worked. You know, And the peanut oil, of course, which Casey recommended for arthritis, just rub it on and things of that nature, as well as the castor oil. And I thought his explanation at that time, or his theory at that time, was a pretty interesting one in view of Casey's prowess. He said that the cell, the individual cell of the body, had an intelligence of its own, a subconscious intelligence. And this would merge with Casey's subconscious mind, which of course was tuned into the universal subconscious, so the two would meet in that little land there of the subconscious, and the cell in the finger would say, please put a little peanut oil on me, you know, I'm hurting there. And Casey would get that message, and then he would say, on this body it is indicated that they have this peanut oil ministration. And I couldn't quite accept it at the time, but I have come to see how it works that way. And I think one of the things that impresses us about this whole metaphysical field is when we see some everyday application of it, either in our lives or in the lives of people that are close to us. Now, there's a man now interested in the Casey work that was brought in by the illness of his son, right here in Malibu, where I live as well, who was a very close friend of mine. The boy was 5 years old. Nothing could help him. He couldn't breathe at night. They had all kinds of medical attention. They were a well-off family, and nobody could help him. They were afraid that one of those nights that he was just not going to, he was going to stop breathing and gag and choke. But there was nothing that could help him. So he knew that I had some connection with the Casey work, the work that Bill was doing in Phoenix, and they were very busy down there, and he asked me if I would call him. So I called Dr. McGary, and he said, I'll see him, tell him to come down. So they drove down there the very next day with their 5-year-old son. Now, as it so happened in this particular case, the odd part of it, or the ironic part, or I think the wonderful part is that Edgar Cayce was no longer here to make the diagnosis. So the McGarys are making the diagnosis medically and so-called scientifically, and then they are using Cayce's subconscious treatments on the basis of their own diagnosis. So on the basis of their diagnosis of this boy's congestion in his lungs and his upper respiratory tract was the same sort of a diagnosis that Edgar had made about his own wife, Gertrude, when she was dying of this lung infection. And that was the fumes from a cask of apple brandy. So here they came up with this, and here was this 5-year-old kid going back into a family that was totally teetotaler. I mean, would have no alcohol in the house at that particular time, as I recall. And he was told to breathe in the fumes of this apple brandy, the cask of, which had been emptied, I guess, of the brandy. Well, it seemed so illogical. It seemed so implausible, and it just seemed to have no connection with anything they'd heard anywhere else. But they had no alternative, because everything else had failed. So when they came back and they told me what had happened, they were half laughing through their tears. I said, well, look, you got no place else to go. And so they tried it, and it worked. And today that boy is 14 or 15 years old, and he's rugged, a wonderful soccer player.
That's all that was used? Not even a castor oil pack to boot?
He's reaching an age where he'll probably start trying the apple brandy.
Well, you know, the apple brandy really has a great therapeutic effect in and of itself, but the people who sell it cannot advertise that. And we got a letter from the vice president of one of the liquor companies that makes Applejack brandy, and he said that he had drawers full of how people have benefited from that, but he also said that we were talking to him about the idea of the inhaling of this fume, the fumes of the Applejack brandy in a charred oak keg. And he said, well, you know, we have a man working in our warehouse where we store the Applejack brandy, and he's been working there for 25 years, and he's never had one respiratory infection in those 25 years because he goes around smelling this stuff all the time. And then I had one fellow that had emphysema, and he had recurrent attacks of bronchitis, which is bad for emphysema because it makes the emphysema worse. And so I started him on the use of the Applejack brandy in a charred oak keg. And he, while he was taking that, he didn't have any more infections. But one day he worked for the Salt River Power Company in Phoenix, and he was an inspector. He was out on the job in the field. And in Arizona, you know, it gets hot. If you think it gets hot up here, well, you don't know what hot is. But he was out in the field, and his boss came around to check on what was happening and said, Jeff, where are your plans? How are things going? He says, well, they're going fine, but you want to look at the plans, we'll go back to the car. So he took his boss back to the car, and he opened the door, and the fumes of Applejack brandy came wafting out of the car. He said, Jeff, you can't drink on the job. He said, boss, I don't drink this, I smell the fumes. Well, I had to write him a letter saying that he just smelled the fumes, he didn't drink the Applejack brandy. But it was very, very healing for him. And
So in cases of emphysema, you recommend this?
Most any any respiratory involvement that is serious lung condition.
And it's Applejack brandy,
yeah.
not apricot brandy, not blackberry brandy, Applejack. Do you know why? The apple is the key, right?
well,
Yeah.
Casey didn't say that the apple was the thing that, you know, was back in the Garden of Eden. He said it was the almond, but I'm not sure about that.
But the charred oak keg seems to be important too. There seems to be something about the carbon from the charred oak keg that's important.
The charred oak keg.
An oak keg, you know, that has been charred on the inside, and that's.
So you have to buy it in that type of a bottle.
Well, you buy the charred oak keg. It's a 2-gallon keg of a sort, and then it's filled with water and put in the bathtub, covered over with water for 24 hours so that it swells against the iron bands and doesn't leak. You don't want the stuff to leak out of it. So then you empty it out, put the Applejack brandy in, and then you have a, perhaps a 4 or 5 inch plastic tube that you put down into a hole in the keg. You store it in a place where it's fairly warm, and then breathe in the fumes through that tube. Casey suggested a number of other inhalants also, which are, some of them are available now in bottles that are prepared by pharmacists.
So you would just take the plastic tube to your nose and
To the mouth.
inhale.
No,
Inhale through the mouth
Mm-hmm.
and inhale the fumes.
breathe
in the
it
Start
fumes.
breathing
for
in.
lung conditions.
All lung conditions and
Even for lung cancer.
and cigarette cough and that sort of thing.
There was an important factor in the Casey healings that we haven't touched upon yet, Elizabeth, and that is the spiritual growth that was essential to the healing. Casey said that the physical healing itself was incidental to the spiritual growth, and that one wouldn't happen without the other. For instance, he had a case of 11-year-old boy. I don't know what the medical term for it was, but this boy was troubled with bedwetting, which was quite embarrassing in his life at that time, and was a major concern in his own development. So Casey had a reading for him, gave him a reading at the request of the parents. And it seemed that in a previous life, because of course, a lot of Casey's healings were associated with karma from the past, and also from the present, you know, sort of a instant cash karma. So he saw this boy in the past. He saw him as having been a minister who was also a teacher. And every time that a student, one of his young students, who was the age of this present age, 10 or 11, didn't measure up or something, he'd have them ducked in water. He'd duck them in water as a punishment. You know. So, which was, of course, totally unchristian, particularly, I would say, for a Christian minister, you know. And so now he had come back as this 11-year-old boy, and this retribution was upon him. Now the problem then was the treatment, and so Casey said that what was required here was to bring back the subconscious feeling of worth, that this boy was troubled by a lack of esteem because dimly in his memory he had all these guilt feelings about what he had done in the past, even though he didn't remember the exact incident himself. They worked on him for about 30 or 40 readings, and it passed away. His feeling of a self-esteem came back, the ailment disappeared, and there was a certain amount of spiritual growth which they followed up on, which seems to carry through for the rest of his life, which Casey said was the big factor and the major factor, spiritual development.
One of the wonderful statements that comes out of the Casey material is the spirit is the life, the mind is the builder, and the physical is the result. And that's one, I suppose, if we were going to use a key focus around which we work at the clinic, that would be it. Working with all three aspects depending on where that particular patient or that particular person is coming from. You know, whether they're coming from the spiritual, mental, or physical aspect and what they can understand.
Well, it's so true that the physical signs we see in our bodies are really clues to what is unresolved in the unconscious. And if we had no problems and didn't have to work to contact God and to go for the inner resolution, of course, we wouldn't make spiritual progress. And to me, what is so comforting about the fact that the law of karma is absolutely exact and inexorable, like a mathematical formula, we bind ourselves by cause as we set in motion, is the fact that God has said, I will remember their sin no more. And that's the prophecy for this age. Well, how does it come to pass that God forgets our karma or erases the cause? And here we find that it is locked in nature, locked in herbs or homeopathy or in the Palma Christi or the various suggestions given to Edgar Cayce that God does not want to see us suffer from our karma. He has no pleasure in the death of the wicked. It's not to punish but to instruct. And it seems as soon as we learn the lesson and are obedient to his laws of harmony, he delivers us from that karma, even if we haven't paid the last farthing.
Well, out of the Cayce material come a number of interesting things. He told one person that first, and he was giving a physical reading, and he said, first, there must be change of attitude toward spiritual and mental things. He made that one sentence, and then he went on to give all the physical things to be done. Well, the fellow did not make his changes, and so he was much like the older doctor who had had a stroke and also got a reading from Edgar Cayce. And this doctor had asked a whole lot of questions, and they were very good questions, and Cayce gave a lot of information, but toward the last he said, will I be healed? And was obviously he hadn't been listening to what else Cayce had already said. And Cayce said, you can heal most any condition, but you can't heal a hard-headed, stiff-necked old man. Which seems to me to be saying you can refuse healing, and that's what people do unconsciously many times. And I think to accept healing is to open oneself to the reality of what we really are as spiritual beings.
One of the things that for us was important out of the Cayce material was the idea that people really need to take responsibility for their own healing.
Well, that's the concept in wholeness.
That's right.
As you were saying, if you desire to be whole, you have to be sacrificial. You must sacrifice what is not whole within you, such as your angers and fears and stubbornness. And you have to sacrifice something to be whole, because that's how we got without wholeness. And that law of karma, of course, because it is made in free will, is subject to our breaking it. But it is never set aside unless we also balance our debts to another part of life who has been wronged by our mistake. And the great therapy, of course, that you see in Alcoholics Anonymous or drug rehabilitation programs is to go to everyone that you have wronged through your problem and speak freely about it and ask forgiveness and say, is there some service I can render you? And I recently got a letter like that. I was very touched by it. And I said, help others to overcome the same drug problem. And so there is the necessity of that atonement, because that's what gives us back our self-esteem that allows us to accept our wholeness.
Now, Harold Riley, I've in discussion with him all the time. He wrote a book called Drugless Therapy, which was based on his own experiences. And he said that his feeling was that the greatest contribution was one actually of faith, you know, in the healings. In other words, that he felt that Edgar Cayce was drawing on this universal intelligence, this universal bank, and that this was applicable to everybody. That Cayce has said that everywhere in nature, I think you touched on it earlier, there's a healing for every ailment that there is. But the primary thing is to have a positive not thinking that Norman Vincent Peale talked about, but a positive sense of feeling, a merger with the universe, that you were part of this universe, and that you were, as to paraphrase the song, you were a child of the universe. And so that this daily merger of the forces in the world took place. I've seen some of it myself in my own work, where I have a feeling that just as there's a radio frequency and a television frequency, I to this day can't understand how on a little transistor radio I go like this and I get San Francisco and somebody's talking and I go like that and the music comes through the wall, comes in through here and comes through there, and nobody else in this world has ever understood how electricity works either. But I feel there's, from my own experience, that there's a healing frequency, and I think that Casey touched on that.
One of the interesting things that Casey talked about was how healing came about, because, let me read just a real short excerpt. He said, for all force, all power emanates from one source, so as has been given that which makes up even the electronic energy that man knows as electrons or energy and electricity, which may be used as a convenience, as a necessity for man's experiences of God itself. And it applies in a lot of ways, because we know that as one person touches another, that there is energy that is passed over, and if one desires to bring healing to another, the very presence or the very touch of that person allows that healing power of God to move through him. And yet the healing, the way Casey described it, was always something that happened within the individual. We may be the means by which an incentive is brought to that ability within by the touch. We may also bring it by the application of a castor oil pack, or by a mechanical therapy, or by electricity, or by massage, or by physical therapy, or by medicine, or by surgery. But to bring that incentive to the healing power that lies within each one of us is to awaken it so that we then become healed. That's why I think that healing is really an event of a spiritual nature working through the physical body, or through the mental body, or through the spiritual body. And it's an event which touches in on the very nature of the human being.
And it is a positive force of the healer, the practitioner, the friend, who assists the loved one in applying the remedy that sustains a polarity of alpha and omega, a wholeness of a circuit that keeps giving the individual the affirmation, you can be healed and you shall be healed. And it's such an important thing to understand that the two create a focus of wholeness for the one who may feel hopeless. I see that in many people. They immediately feel that what they have is hopeless, and when you tell them it's not, it's like it dispels a certain spell or superstition.
Yeah. And the thing that we have become so aware of is that we as physicians are not the ones that do the healing. We become channels through which healing moves, but the healing has to come about by making contact with the physician within each person.
So we really have to talk to and commune with the Christ intelligence
Within
and the
each.
body elemental. And I was wondering that in your use of the Casey cures, if you have them cataloged, and if someone comes in with a disease, you look in your catalog how Casey treated it.
Well, not exactly, because you see, if we do that, then we're working at the manifestation of the dis-ease that has become a disease. But rather, each individual is very creative, and we can create all kinds of illnesses if we arrange our minds to use the spirit energy the right way. We can do all sorts of things to ourselves, and we do it because of maybe influences from past lives, or abnormalities of the way we think and believe. But what we try to do is work where that person accepts therapy. In other words, he may accept it only at the physical, and then we use some of these physical things dependent upon what we think, we feel that patient will accept. But then we go back, we try to go back to what lies behind the illness, because it's always like in a computer. There's a fund of information that's been built into the whole nervous system or the being that is like an influence, and that influence keeps playing back every time we punch a certain button. But it's that attitude, that emotional pattern that influences maybe the glands of the body, the endocrine glands, and they have a force, both neurological and endocrinological, that influence the functioning physiology of the body. So being each one individual, why we can create what kind of an illness you know, we have worked with over the centuries, perhaps, over many incarnations. And so we need to get back, finally, sooner or later, in one manner or another, to the cause of the thing, which lies in what do we do about forgiveness? What do we do about understanding? What do we do about gentleness with another person? These things become part of what we try to understand with our patients and help them through to a true healing, which is healing of the body, mind, and spirit.
And then there are therapeutic modalities that we can apply.
Sure.
That are like one really good thing that is good for all mothers to know about is what we call cold massage, and any mother can fix it in her kitchen. It's a combination of equal parts of mutton tallow, spirits of camphor, and spirits of turpentine. And you mix those equal parts in a bottle, and for children with upper respiratory problems, a lot of kids who have been on antibiotics for years, you know, they have repeated ear infections, they have repeated tonsillitis and sinus congestion. You shake that up and just milk out these lymphatics in the neck, the chest, the lower back, and the bottoms of the feet, and let the child sleep with that. It allows the immune system, the reticular endothelial system, to start functioning better. And very often you simply don't need to use anything more in the way of antibiotics. There's a wonderful natural antibiotic that's garlic. Garlic oil is great for ear infections.
Garlic oil today it can be purchased in the health food store, and you can fill up little gelatin capsules and take it as a preventive medicine.
That's right.
Regularly. And it's deodorized, and you swallow it and have no other effects.
And it's very kind to the whole intestinal tract, too.
Yes,
it's one of the most healing things as far as the GI tract is concerned.
It's a good substance for health maintenance.
Yeah.
One other thing that helps a whole lot with people who have allergies is the use of castor oil drops. And the way we advise people to use that is have a dropper bottle, you know, filled with castor oil, and then each night take a dropper full of castor oil and squeeze it out on the tongue, and follow it down with half a glass of water. And most people will lose their allergies just simply taking that one simple therapy.
Castor oil, a dropperful, on the tongue at night, followed by water. For the elimination of any kind of allergy.
Yes, we've had severe allergies, people with severe allergies, asthmatic problems, and so on.
Bill, tell us about the internal use of castor oil.
Well, castor oil has been used over the ages, you know, and I'm sure that Gladys, in doing her OB work, used castor oil to induce the labor or to help the person get into labor when they're pregnant and about to have their baby. But it's been used, we've used it to help the process of what's called elimination. Elimination comes from 4 parts of our body: the skin, the lungs, the kidneys, and the intestinal tract and the liver. And with castor oil, it's a cleansing thing, whether taken on the surface or internally. And so it helps in cleansing the body through the intestinal tract. And so Cayce maintained that if the eliminations are kept correct and the assimilations then are okay, then we can live to whatever age we wish. But if we get in trouble with those two, why, we have difficulties. But that's basically what we use it for. But we don't use it a great deal for that. We use a castor oil pack over the abdomen, which does the same thing frequently, because the vibrations go inside and they act in a more gentle way than large doses of castor oil.
And of course, you're describing the obvious benefits of the internal use of castor oil, but since the entire system will process it, we have no way of knowing exactly what it might do as a body toner.
That's right.
As an all-around balancing of the life force.
It's been used medically in large doses to help with detoxifying people who are on drugs.
Who've taken overdose.
I'm very interested in your work in the birthing movement, and I'm wondering exactly how you administer castor oil to induce labor. And how
Well,
much?
the castor oil to induce labor is 2 ounces of castor oil when a person is overdue or there seems to be a reason to induce labor. And it can be taken in different ways, but that's a very good way. The thing that was really exciting to me with the use of castor oil in obstetrics, though, was the use of it externally as a pack to prevent things like miscarriages. We've had any number of patients who were threatening to abort, and with the use of castor oil packs over the abdomen, over the uterus, she's been able to carry the pregnancy to term.
That is very exciting.
It's very exciting, and problems like ovarian cysts. Through the years, we've worked with women, and they've been able to really eliminate ovarian cysts. Not all ovarian cysts, but quite a number of them. And uterine fibroids have been taken care of with the use of castor oil pack. There are a lot of female problems that have been dealt with simply the use of castor oil packs.
Well, why don't you tell the story about the little baby that was born?
Yeah.
She almost miscarried.
I had one patient that, well, I got about 3 of those, but that I could tell.
One
But
will
this
do.
one particular lady had 5 miscarriages, and she was threatening to miscarry again. And she came in the office at about 6 weeks, was beginning to spot, and I started on the castor oil packs. She carried that baby to term without any problem. This cutest little red-headed girl. And then 2 years later, she was pregnant again, and the same thing happened. She now has 2 children that we call castor oil babies. But, but I have another patient that was really, to me, it was really remarkable because she started to bleed. And I sent her home with the castor oil pack, and she put it on her belly, went to bed for a period of about 24 hours. And the bleeding stopped, everything went along. She used the pack for another 2 weeks and then stopped using it. But all through the pregnancy, she'd say things to me like, "You think the baby's all right?" And I'd say, "I see no reason to have any problems." When the baby was born, the delivery was perfectly normal. When the baby was born, I looked at the baby, and at first everything looked fine, but then I looked again, and the baby had a perfect hair lip scar that started up in the nose, went down through the lip, right across the gum, and up into the soft palate. And I said to the nurse, "It looks to me like the master surgeon was at work in utero." And when you consider it, you would not have had a scar if there had not been a defect there forming. And when I came home, I said to Bill, "When does in embryology, when does the lip form?" Because I was quite sure it was about at 6 weeks, and we looked it up, and it was. And you see, what was happening there was that the baby was sort of in his own karmic pattern, planning to be born with a hair lip. But because of what the mother was able to do, and because of bringing these other vibratory effects in, and basically bringing the palm of Christ into the whole picture, that defect was repaired, and the baby was not born with a hair lip. Now, he does have, at this point, as his first tooth came in, it came in a little crooked because of the scar, and so on. But that kind of thing is exciting.
Well, I am very glad that you use the term applying the palm of Christ, which is a far greater thought form than saying applying castor oil.
Oh, yes.
It's wonderful. And I just wanted to know, first of all, exactly how does one take the 2 ounces to induce labor when the mother is having contractions, but the progress of the delivery is not proceeding?
Well, she could take it any way she can get it down, but usually...
You just drink it.
Just drink it.
Drink it maybe with a little apple juice or something?
Orange juice usually works better. Just a pinch of baking soda makes it more palatable, but just getting it down is the important thing.
Now, I've seen people in labor for 48 hours and not delivering, and I think this is a marvelous thing to remember.
No, I think really Casey suggested that castor oil packs be put on the abdomen of women who were pregnant, you see, because it helps to make the baby more normal, helps to make the body of the uterus, which is feeding the baby, you know, more normal. And so a much more normal child can come in using the castor oil packs than one who does not.
The wonder of it is that when you do use a castor oil pack, you do use a slight amount of heat, which I would think the child would interpret as comfort and loving, and also be the simulation of the hand, the healing hand of Christ, which in fact the mother may place her hands as the focus of the polarity of alpha and omega, to charge the palm of Christ with that healing light of her own love, while also talking and comforting the child.
And we tell her to visualize. In fact, whenever we suggest that people use the castor oil pack, we very often, if they seem to be in a receptive at all frame of mind, tell them to visualize the palm of Christ. Whether they're putting it over their liver and their gallbladder, or over their uterus, or the back of the neck, or the ankle, or the arm, or wherever, if they can visualize the palm of Christ being used at that time, it enhances their therapy.
Do you ever tell them to put the right hand of themselves on the place and then visualize Christ's hand over their hand?
We've done that too. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of pregnancy during the 9 months, how frequently would you suggest a mother use a castor oil pack, and for what length of time with each application?
Well, it depends. If she's busy, I mean, she's got 5 kids and she doesn't have time to sit down. In a situation like that, if she'll put it on at night and sleep with it on. Just put it over the uterus and pin a towel in place and sleep with it on. It works very nicely. Otherwise, to use it maybe 3 days a week, 3 consecutive days for an hour to an hour and a half with heat. And take that time to relax and lie down. In the case of a miscarriage or a threatened miscarriage, if she puts the pack on and just leaves it on until all of the cramping and all the spotting and so on has stopped, then it's a continuous thing, and we usually suggest that she warm it up and put it on and then take the heat off, because her own body heat at that point is sufficient to maintain the warmth.
And of course, it's very important not to go to sleep with a heating pad.
That's right.
We had one patient who was pregnant, and she believed very firmly in use of castor oil packs during pregnancy, and so she wore one all day long. And I had the plastic on the outside and a bath towel folded lengthwise and pinned in place with safety pins. And our kids would walk around and punch her because they like to hear the crackle of the plastic. But you see, the heat of the body makes it a warm pack. And she used it almost the whole way through pregnancy. Not that she had anything wrong, but that she thought this would make for a better child.
We're so excited now about these castor oil packs. We've got to see you do one. So if you could call someone from the audience to come forward.
Well, Lawrence, how about you? Would you come on up? See, there are many ways that you can do a castor oil pack. Something like this. This is a pack that was put together by a lady who used to work at the clinic and now is at your place, Ruth Bolton. And it has in it a bottle of castor oil, and also has in it the flannel cloth, which is wool and which makes for a better pack than cotton.
Wool is better than cotton.
Yes, because I think wool has the nature of the animal, which is a warmth.
Come here, Ruth. You're such an old hand at this. This is Ruth Bolton, who worked at that clinic in Phoenix and brought the understanding of the castor oil pack originally to our community.
Well, you pour it on like that and make all sorts of strange figures on the flannel, you see.
Move our potato.
Now that is a lot of castor oil.
That's not really so much. You usually get castor oil in pint jars so that it works better. But you see, if you soak it like that, then it gradually soaks into the flannel and makes for a not a sloppy or a real thick solution of the castor oil, but rather that which would create healing in the human body, you see. And so you do it like that.
Now that's at least big enough for your liver, isn't it?
That's right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So then you just put it around the, let's get this over before we put the flannel. See, it takes 2 of us to do this, doesn't it, Ruth? And so then you simply take a towel and fasten it around there, and that's what a castor oil pack is.
Just a plain bathroom towel and pin it.
Now, when you do it like this, you don't need a heating pad unless, well, there are times when a heating pad is beneficial And if you're going to wear it a long period of time, you wouldn't need a heating pad because the body creates its own heat, you see. And so you just put the towel around there and then wear it. But this is a castor oil pack like one can use over the abdomen. It can be done anyway, such as we did the one a moment ago, or it can be packed like this that one of our ladies at the clinic designed, that has the pocket for the heating pad, and it also has these that go around the body and have Velcro pads on it so that they then hook in and hold tight.
That is very nifty.
It's very nifty, and then you can turn this on. And
you're always afraid to move or roll over in bed because your castor oil pack is not going to come with you.
So that's a castor oil pack.
That's the castor oil pack, and now we're just dying to know what you're going to do with that potato.
Well, I'm going to pass it on to my wife and let her show you how it's to be used.
You want to tell them why?
Well, the potato poultice is a therapy that has a long history, and the potato has an enzyme in its cellular structure, and when Gladys does this sort of thing, what it's doing is releasing the enzyme and making a little bit of an enzyme poultice, or an enzyme application to the eye, and it's used most commonly to the eye. Now, she's not as accurate at that as
yes,
I am.
I am. This is a hard potato and a knife that's hard to work with. You want to do it?
Well, Gladys, since we've all heard the value of potato peels, why are you peeling it?
I'm not peeling it. I'm scraping the whole potato.
You're scraping the whole potato.
The whole potato. The peel and all.
Yeah, it has to be the whole thing, or you don't get the benefit of the enzyme in the potato.
There we are.
And so when you get sufficient of the potato scraped like that to make a juicy sort of a pack, then what one does is take the pack, and you have to put it on a piece of cloth, and then close your eyelids and put it right into the eyes, or against the eyelids. And what happens then is that the eyes get a treatment of enzyme. It's an enzyme treatment. And we have used it in people who have cataracts, and sometimes I've done it with many children who have had styes of the eye, and only one time did it require 2 such poultices. So it's very health-producing to the eye in almost any condition.
And you just make 2 nice little mushy piles like this, and put it on a piece of cloth, and pick up you can make a bigger pile than that, and then take them and put them on your eyes like this. And you want to make sure that you have clothing that isn't going to get stained, because, you know, a potato stains almost worse than anything.
Really?
And you just can't get that out. So you want, and it can get pretty juicy too.
You put the cloth down first, and then scrape this onto the cotton, and then separate it, and then put it over the eyes.
And how long do you leave that on?
20 minutes.
Looks about like a tablespoon.
Yeah, you could put a little bit more than that, you know, to have it on the eye.
What has it actually cured aside from soothing the eye?
Well, we've treated people who have cataracts of the eye, and
what's the result? What's the result?
Well, you know, a woman, one of the first ones we treated that way was a woman who was in her late 60s, and she died probably about 8 or 10, 12 years later of an unassociated condition, but her doctors had wanted her to have a cataract operation. She didn't want it, and so starting to use this and changing her diet a bit, why she avoided having cataract surgery, and her eyes never got worse, and she was able to read.
In thinking about this potato, and many people I've known greatly burdened with cataracts who have desired that healing from God without that surgery, you think about this potato that's in everybody's house.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It has a signature. It has eyes.
Yeah. You're right.
And it does.
Mm-hmm.
But who would have ever thought of it?
It's best not to get a real young potato, the red kind. It's rather the kind that you use to bake. And they're the ones that have the juice in them. And if you're not scraping so that the juice sprays all over your face while you're doing it, you're not doing it right. Because that always happens. It sprays all over you.
Do you treat anything else with a potato? Is that it? Its eyes?
Well, basically, when we start using this, then people tell us about how they've used a potato poultice for boils to bring them up to the surface, and how their mother used the potato for different things. So it's been used a lot. It's a tremendously healing substance. And we think it's, among other things, it's the enzymes of the potato which are used by the body for the healing process.
I know raw potato eaten is very curative.
Very good.
Doctors Bill and Gladys McGary, Jess Stearn, thank you for being the flame of freedom that speaks at Summit University Forum.
Thank you.
God bless you all.
Thank you.
Speaking on Edgar Cayce and his cures. A great, great, great understanding that we've gained from your presence here.
Thank you.
We're eternally grateful.
You've been watching Summit University Forum with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Elizabeth Clare Prophet, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom.